The much-loved children's novel Ballet Shoes by Noel Streatfeild tells the story of three adopted sisters, Pauline, Petrova and Posy Fossil, each discovered as a baby by an elderly, absent-minded paleontologist during his world travels and sent home to his London house to live with his great-niece Sylvia and her childhood nanny, Nana. The girls are sent to school at the Children's Academy of Dancing and Stage Training, where it soon becomes clear that Pauline has potential as an actress and Posy a real talent for ballet. Petrova's passions lie under the bonnet of a car or an aeroplane fuselage, but that's for another day. In this extract, Pauline has just turned 12 and is now old enough to audition for the first time for a professional show. Money is tight, so Pauline sees the chance to play Alice in a production of Alice in Wonderland as her chance to make a difference. At last, a voice called out from the dark, "Will all the children whose names I call out step forward, please?" Winifred's and Pauline's names were called, and so were all the other children with their hair done like Alice's. They looked at each other to see what they ought to do, and then came downstage and stood in a row in front of the footlights. They seemed to be there an enormous time while people whispered. And then a different voice said, "Little fair girl in black, what's your name?" Pauline was just looking to see if anyone else was wearing black as well as herself when Miss J replied, "That is Pauline Fossil." There was a lot more whispering, and then the other children were told to sit down. Pauline felt awful standing by herself, being stared at by all the people on stage and all those she could not see in the stalls. She would have liked to have wriggled and stood on one leg, but the academy training had taught her not to stand just how she felt, so she stood as she did before a class, with her toes turned out and her heels together and her hands clasped behind her back. After what felt like an hour and was really only a few minutes, Miss J came in front of the stalls where Pauline could see her. She leant across the orchestra well. "They're going to try you. Will you sing first or do your speech?" Every boy or girl at the academy, when they were nearing their 12th birthday, got what was called mordition prepared. They meant really my audition, but somehow habit had turned into one word. Mordition was a speech from a play or recitation and a song which had a dance worked to the chorus or to a repeat of the tune. If a child was being seen for an acting part or simply as a dancer, of course he or she only acted or danced, but every child had a full mordition ready. Pauline had Puck's speech from A Midsummer Night's Dream and a song called Springtime is Fairy Time, which had a waltz tune and so was easy to dance to. She thought for a moment, faced with mordition for the first time, and then said she would do Puck's speech, for she knew it would be easier to act than to sing when her voice was wobbly with fright. The moment she started, she stopped feeling frightened. She had worked at the speech for hours with Dr. Jakes. Together they had discussed exactly how Puck felt and how he looked, until just saying the words made her feel that she had turned into a queer little creature who did not belong to the mortal world. When she had finished, Miss J called out that she was to ask her nurse for her music. Pauline turned very red, for she felt all the other children were thinking how much too old she was to have a nurse. She wanted to explain to them that Nana was not really a nurse, and anyhow Posy was still young enough to need somebody to look after her. But of course she could not, so she fetched her music feeling shamed. Although she'd seen the Mock Turtle person give his music to the man at the piano, she did not quite like to do that with hers, so she looked at him first to see if he seemed to be waiting for it. He made things easy. He held out his hand and said cheerfully, "Throw it over." He seemed to know exactly what she was going to do because he turned to the last page and played a bit and asked her if it was the right time for her dance. Pauline did some little bits of the steps and said it was. Then she went to the middle of the stage and sang. She was very glad when she got to the end of the second verse, which was all the singing there was, for she had not a very big voice, and it sounded to her in that large theatre like a mouse squeaking. She did not mind the dance so much, though it was on her points. There was not much of it, but it felt funny dancing in a velvet frock. The dance finished in a pose on the floor, And when it was over, Pauline got up, feeling rather a fool and wondering what to do next. A set dance like that, if done at a charity performance, ended in applause, and if done at the academy, ended in criticism. But no dance Pauline had ever seen ended in silence. She looked desperately around and to see if any face showed what she ought to be doing. And there was Winifred, making tremendous signals at the chair next to her. Thankfully, Pauline ran to it and sat.